Buckle up, the ride ain't over yet. Welcome back to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
All right, folks, welcome back. So glad to have you with us. So, Mallory, is that Mike back on the line? That is him? Okay, fantastic. Let's go ahead and get Mike back on. All right. Mike, are you there with us now?
I'm here. We got the string tighter on the cans.
Yeah, we got the string tighter. Well, we had a little glitch here. Listen, we're on the Gulf Coast. We've got some amazing electric storms all over the Gulf Coast, and so and our phone line took a hit there, I think, for a second, but everything's back up. It all rebooted. It's back up, and that's just, those things happen, especially during the summer months. Anyway, redeem the time. You get back on with whatever you were talking about. I know we were talking about the pot thing in Canada, but I also know you wanted to get into talking about Turkey and the Bible and what's happening in the geopolitical realm.
Yeah, I just wanted to tie all this in with Turkey because Turkey represents a place of powerful Christian influence. But today, Turkey has fewer Christians than Syria, where there's a total devastation of the country is happening in Syria, and yet there are more Christians in Syria than there is in Turkey right now. Yeah. And yet Turkey is mentioned throughout the New Testament. It was home to the 7 churches of Asia, which is where the book of Revelation was said. The letters to the churches in Revelation were all sent to Turkey.
That's right.
And John, the Apostle John, he's supposed to have taken Mary to Ephesus, which is a church in Turkey. And guess what? The largest church in the world for 1,000 years was in Turkey. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing, and I think that the devil was like, there's so much activity going on in Turkey right now for the kingdom. I got to put my embassy there. Yeah. Or Pergamus at the time, but is a modern Pergamum. Uh-huh. And I believe he was referring to the Pergamon altar. And that is an amazing story. Maybe we should tackle that after the break, but that is an amazing story, what happened there and its connections to Germany, which I believe is the leopard of Revelation, is Germany. And there are things happening in Germany right now with respect to the Pergamus altar that I think that we may see a stock shift at the end of 2019, early 2020, when it comes to Germany, the leopard, and the Pergamon altar.
Okay.
Because that whole thing was moved to Germany in the early 1900s, and guess what? 2 world wars broke out after that.
Yeah, and let me just jump in for those that are new to the Word of God or do not know what we're talking about. In the book of Revelation, chapter 2 and chapter 3, that whole book of Revelation was written first to John was directed, give this to the 7 churches that are in Asia Minor, which it wasn't called Turkey back then. It was part of the Roman Empire, Asia Minor, to the 7 churches. So there are letters to the 7 churches. Those are real churches, real time, real letters, real messages to those churches. One of them was in the city of Pergamum, which is squarely in the heart of Turkey. And in that letter, Jesus himself tells John to tell the church, he says, I know where you live, Jesus says. You live where Satan has his throne on earth. Jesus says that twice. So something about that area of the world, which became the Islamic Caliphate of the Ottoman Empire, and now under Erdogan, it's rising again to be the Ottoman Caliphate the Islamic Caliphate of the world. It's like God brought his nation back, Israel, so Satan's trying to counterfeit it and bring his nation back, an Islamic Turkey. Mike?
Yes, and the Pergamon altar, which was in Pergamus, it was dedicated to Baal and Ishtar. Mm-hmm. And a German engineer named Karl Humann, he dug that thing up in 1886, and he moved the whole thing to Germany. And they built an entire museum dedicated to this thing. It's still there. And then World War I broke out. They tore the whole thing down, rebuilt it to perfection. And then World War II broke out, the devil killing 6 million Jews and tens of millions of other people. But guess what? At the end of actually September 2014, they shut the thing down again, and it's scheduled to reopen by the end of or early 2020. So I wonder what's going on there right now. We may see a shift in Bible prophecy back towards Germany and Turkey. I mean, look at this week. Turkey, Erdogan just solidified his power, getting rid of the office of prime minister and solidifying his whole caliphate. Now he is a caliph in that area where the church essentially began. I know it began in earnest in Israel, but I mean the church spread out into Turkey, and that's where I mean, that is where the heart of Christianity really took root in the world, was in Turkey.
Yeah, the Apostle Paul came from there. When the church sent out for him, they sent out to him, what was he known as? Saul of Tarsus. That was in Turkey. You know, I mean, so much is tied to Turkey. Saul of Tarsus. Listen, when Abraham was brought out of Ur of the Chaldeans, God didn't take him straight into the promised land, Canaan. He took him first to Haran, Haran, which if you look on a map of the ancient world, it was in what's now Turkey. I mean, hey, when Noah's Ark came to rest on the mountains of Mount Ararat, where's that? Turkey. The Euphrates River, where's the head of it? Turkey. I mean, there's something about that, brother, that area up there that is very, very spiritual, and now it's like 98%, 99% Muslim. But anyway,
Christians were first called Christians in Antioch, which is in Turkey.
Yes.
So we have that going on,
Well.
and so really Christianity, as we know it today, Christianity first took root in Antioch, which is in Turkey, and we have all of this stuff going on in Turkey, and then we have this Pergamon altar. Okay, so I did some research on this thing, and we've done a show on this before, but it's dedicated to Baal and Ishtar, and the two principal deities of ancient Babylon were Baal and Ishtar, right? And Baal was the god of war. Think about this now. So this guy, this engineer, he goes into Turkey. He digs up all these fragments of this Pergamon altar, and he gathers all this up. And by the early 1900s, he had built this thing in this museum, but it was kind of shoddy. Like you couldn't really walk around it. It was really poorly constructed. So, and then World War I breaks out, which involved Germany, and there was a triangle axis of powers there, and then you had, and then Germany loses that war, and then they tear this thing down, and in 1930 they built this thing. If you guys Google Pergamon altar, you can see pictures of this beautiful structure in Germany, and they built an entire museum around this thing, and they also have a structure dedicated to Ishtar on the same place called Berlin's Museum Island, and it's a popular tourist attraction there. And Ishtar, so these two altars are sitting on this museum island right now in Germany. And let me see here. I got to go back to this thing here. Okay, Ishtar. Now, the two principal deities of ancient Babylon were Baal and Ishtar. Both of these structures are now in Germany on Museum Island, and Baal was the god of war. Right, so here we have they moved this temple, this Pergamon altar, to Germany. Two world wars break out, Carl. And what is the Second World War? What is it focused on? It is focused on one of the two witnesses of the Book of Revelation, which is Israel. Right.
Well, may I also say very quickly? So really was World War I. They just weren't able to pull it off. World War II came out of World War I. World War II, if Germany had won that. You know, if that whole Ottoman Empire had not collapsed, and if Germany had not collapsed, I mean, you know, that's what World War II grew out of. So both of them were connected to trying to destroy Israel and the Jews. Go ahead.
Absolutely, well, absolutely, because who does the devil hate most? Israel and the Jews, because Jesus was a Jew. The Messiah was prophesied to come out of Israel. When this happened, when this child was born, the prophets came and they said, we're looking for this child because he will be the king of Israel, savior of the world. So they went after and slaughtered all these firstborn children. I mean, the devil has always been after this firstborn ever since the garden, right? The garden.
Yeah.
And he's always been after them. And yet he has failed at every turn, and he will continue to fail. But I just want to keep an eye on Germany and Turkey relations in the next couple of years, because this thing could explode, Carl. It could really take off from here.
The Satanists wanted to install their own tribute, a pagan idol, on the Capitol grounds right next to the Ten Commandments.
Billions around the planet are witnessing a world in the grasp of sadistic spiritual darkness. This unholy alliance has infected our governments, our religious institutions, and our societies. The world appears to be unraveling. But can the evil behind these dark supernatural forces be defeated? Is everything playing out just as the Bible predicted it will in the final days? At last, you can know the answers to mankind's most urgent questions and learn your destiny among today's events in the new, unprecedented work taking the prophecy world by storm. Gods and Thrones, Nakash, Forgotten Prophecy and the Return of the Elohim by best-selling author, former decorated law enforcement officer, and senior pastor Carl Gallups. This changes everything. Available now wherever fine books are sold.
American Survival Wholesale is proud to sponsor this ministry and their efforts to shed light on the issues that face our nation. As a veteran and Christian-owned and operated company, we support the freedom to express these Christian principles. We all understand the importance of being prepared. After witnessing the devastation of Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and the wildfires that affected so many, please support this ministry by clicking on the link below and check out the amazing alt media package for our listeners. Plus, if you use the promo code PNN Radio, that's PNN Radio, you will receive free shipping, a savings of up to $200. Just click on the link below, but please do it today. Your support means so much to this channel.